Chapter 1. The Wedding That Promised Forever. Elena Carter stood at the edge of the small gazebo, her hands nervously clutching a bouquet of pale lilies and white roses. The soft hum of violins mingled with the summer breeze as golden sunlight danced across the lawns of the Biltmore estate in Asheville, North Carolina. It was the kind of day she had dreamed of since she was a girl, the kind of wedding that novels were written about. Across the aisle, Daniel Carter adjusted the cuffs of his navy suit. His gaze locked onto Elena's, and for a fleeting second, every tension between them disappeared. His smile was boyish, wide, confident. Elena smiled back, tears already brimming in her eyes. It had taken them 4 years of dating, of long-distance jobs and late-night phone calls, but they had made it. Today was the start of their forever. The officiant's voice brought her back into the moment. As vows were exchanged, Elena's voice quivered with emotion. "I promise to stand by you through every storm, to love you in silence and in laughter, in sickness and in health." She saw Daniel's mother, Margaret, watching from the front row, her expression unreadable. A tight-lipped smile. A nod too small to be warm. Still, Elena brushed the thought away. This day wasn't about winning anyone's approval. It was about Daniel, about them. After the ceremony, the reception unfolded like a page from a bridal magazine. Twinkling lights hung from trees. Guests sipped champagne and danced to a live jazz trio. Daniel held Elena tightly as they swayed to their first dance, "The way you look tonight." His whisper sent shivers down her spine. "You're the most beautiful thing that's ever happened to me." Elena laughed, genuinely. "Let's make a family," she said, almost in a whisper, half a prayer. Daniel nodded. "A whole house full," he said. That night, after the guests had gone and the laughter faded into the quiet of their honeymoon suite, Elena lay beside Daniel, her head on his chest. She whispered about baby names, about a nursery painted soft yellow, about bedtime stories and sticky fingers. Daniel listened, his fingers brushing her hair. "We'll get there," he said. Soon. For months, that hope carried her. She tracked her cycle. She read parenting books. She began volunteering at her school's daycare, imagining what it would be like to hold her own child. But as the months slipped into a year, and then 2, the dream began to stretch thin. Pregnancy tests were always negative. Each doctor's appointment left her feeling more broken. And yet, Daniel never seemed too concerned. "These things take time," he said. "It'll happen." By year 3, Margaret began to make comments, quiet at first, then louder, more frequent. "Maybe Elena's too stressed. Women these days are always running around, forgetting their role." Elena bit her tongue, again and again, for Daniel's sake. She told herself it would pass. That love would conquer this too. But love, she would later learn, doesn't always scream when it dies. Sometimes it goes silent. And still, on that first day, that golden summer afternoon, none of that pain had arrived yet. Only promises. Only forever. Blue Book Chapter 2, Cracks Beneath the Surface. 2 years into their marriage, Elena Carter was still waking up early with a kind of quiet hope. Each morning, she would pause in the bathroom with a pregnancy test in hand, staring at the single pink line that seemed to mock her. It was always the same, stark, lonely, and final. She stopped telling Daniel about the tests. She didn't want to see the dull look in his eyes again, the dismissive shrug, the way he always said, "We're young. It'll happen when it happens." But she wasn't young, not by medical standards. At 32, she knew time wasn't on her side. At work, the sight of her students playing house and giggling over make-believe babies began to sting. During lunch breaks, her coworkers would exchange baby shower invitations and ultrasound photos. Elena would smile and pretend not to ache. It was around that time that Margaret Carter began dropping by unannounced. She would bring soup, casseroles, cookies, all laced with comments. "You know, I was already pregnant with Daniel by your age," Margaret would say over tea. Maybe you should see a different doctor. Or maybe it's something you're doing wrong. Elena remained polite, even smiled. But her heart twisted with every word. Daniel, when confronted, only sighed. She doesn't mean it like that. She's just worried about us. Just let it go, Elena. And so she did. For him. But things got worse. Margaret started suggesting natural remedies, even insisting Elena join her for awkward herbal appointments with an acupuncturist friend. At one point, she brought over brochures for a fertility center in Georgia, not for Elena and Daniel together, but just for Elena. One evening, after yet another negative test, Elena sat at the kitchen table in silence. Daniel came home late from work, loosened his tie, and kissed her on the forehead. Bad day? She nodded. Mom called me today, he said, opening the fridge. She wants me to meet someone. Just for coffee. One of the daughters of her bridge club friend. She says it'll get her off my back. Elena froze. You're going to meet her? Daniel looked genuinely confused. It's not a date, Elena. It's just to calm Mom down. I don't want to hear her nagging anymore. You know how she is. Her voice was small. And you thought this was the solution? It's not like I'm going to marry her. No, you already did that with me, Elena said, standing up, her voice cracking. Daniel softened, walked over to her. Hey, I didn't mean it like that. You know I love you. I'm not replacing you. It's just, she's obsessed with grandkids. I need her off our backs. Elena turned away, tears stinging her eyes. He didn't even realize how much it hurt. That was the worst part. He didn't even see it. That night, while Daniel slept soundly beside her, Elena lay awake, staring at the ceiling. A quiet voice inside her, one that she had buried for years, whispered the truth she refused to face. He doesn't defend you. He doesn't protect you. And deep down, he doesn't really see you. She clutched her stomach with both hands, as if trying to hold together the pieces of a dream that was beginning to fall apart. Blue Book Chapter 3. The Weight of Blame. Elena stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, fingers running absently through her hair as if searching for the woman she used to be. Her skin looked a little duller. Her eyes carried permanent shadows, and her smile, once so easy, now felt like something she had to remember how to do. The knock at the front door broke the silence. She didn't need to guess who it was. When she opened the door, Margaret stood there in a crisp beige coat, her lips pinched and eyes sharp. I brought that ginger tea I told you about. It's supposed to increase blood flow to the uterus, she said as she walked past Elena into the house, without waiting to be invited. Elena followed, hands tightening into fists. I don't think that's necessary anymore, Margaret. We've tried everything. Margaret turned sharply. Clearly not everything. You're still not pregnant. The words hit like a slap. Elena drew in a slow breath. We've done the tests. Everything medical we can do. You did the tests, Margaret said pointedly. Daniel's fine. He comes from strong stock. 3 generations of boys born before the first wedding anniversary. Elena bit down on her lip. She had promised herself never to say it. Not unless Daniel did. But her restraint was starting to bleed. Margaret looked around the living room with the judgmental gaze of a realtor evaluating a fixer-upper. You know, I was talking to a friend of mine. Her niece is just 27. College graduate, family-oriented. You'd like her. Elena's heart stopped. You're still trying to set Daniel up? Even while we're married. I'm trying to help this family, Margaret snapped. You're 34, Elena. The clock's ticking and Daniel deserves a future. Grandchildren. Legacy. Elena stood straighter. He has a wife. And maybe, if he stopped listening to you long enough to actually fight for her, he'd remember that. Margaret's eyes narrowed. Some women are just not meant to be mothers. The sentence was a blade. Elena didn't reply. She turned away, walked into the kitchen, and clutched the edge of the counter until her knuckles turned white. Margaret eventually left, muttering about ungratefulness. When the door closed, The silence in the house felt louder than ever. That night, Elena sat on the couch waiting for Daniel. He came home late, again, smelling of aftershave and cheap bar food. She didn't ask where he had been. She didn't want to hear another excuse about clearing his head or driving around. Instead, she slid the manila envelope across the table. Daniel picked it up with confusion. Inside was a letter from the fertility clinic, stamped clearly. Male factor, azoospermia, no viable sperm present. Daniel went pale. What is this? It's from your last test, Elena said quietly. The one I begged you to take 6 months ago. You never opened the results. I did. You? Why didn't you tell me? She looked at him, her voice trembling but steady. Because you were already falling apart. You were losing yourself. You couldn't even deal with your mother's words, let alone this. I thought, maybe if I just took the blame, you'd feel less broken. Daniel stood silent, the paper trembling in his hands. I let them blame me, Elena continued, because I loved you that much. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Daniel finally sat down. I didn't know. Elena, I thought you didn't want kids anymore. I do want them. Just not like this. Not with someone who won't fight for me. She stood, went to the bedroom, and returned with a second envelope. Inside it, divorce papers. I'm done fighting alone, Daniel. He said nothing as she walked past him, out the door, into the night. For the first time in 5 years, she didn't feel empty. She felt free. Blue Book Chapter 4. A letter without return. The morning after Elena left, Daniel sat on the edge of the living room couch, still holding the envelope she had left behind. The air in the house felt different, hollow. Like someone had taken out all the oxygen and left behind only silence. No sound of a kettle boiling, no rustle of keys in the hallway, no soft voice calling his name. He flipped the envelope in his hand again and again, as if the motion might turn back time. The divorce papers were neatly filled out, every line signed with that familiar, steady script of hers. She had even attached a small, handwritten letter, just a few paragraphs. He read it now for the 5th time. Daniel, I never stopped loving you. I waited 5 years for the man who held me on our wedding night, who whispered about nurseries and laughter and a house full of life. I believed in that dream more than I should have. I protected you from a truth that would have broken your pride, but in doing so, I broke myself. I let them say I was barren. I smiled when your mother insulted me. I stayed when you stopped looking at me with the eyes of a partner. This is not revenge. This is not punishment. This is me choosing to stop bleeding quietly for a love that no longer knows how to hold me. Goodbye, Elena. Daniel crumpled the letter against his chest and leaned forward, elbows on his knees. He was trembling, not just from guilt, but from a new and terrifying clarity. He had been wrong. About everything. When he called Elena's phone, it went to voicemail. Her email bounced back a polite auto-reply. Thank you for reaching out. I am taking some personal time and will not be checking messages for the foreseeable future. He even drove to her school that afternoon, sitting in the car across the street as parents picked up children from the front gate. But Elena wasn't there. The principal told him she had resigned, no forwarding contact. Back at home, Margaret showed up unannounced, her arms full of fresh-baked lemon bread. I figured this was hard for you, she said as she put the bread on the kitchen counter. But maybe this is for the best. Now you can start again, with someone who can give you children. Daniel didn't say anything. Margaret, oblivious, continued. You know, that young girl from the garden club, Brittany, she. Stop, he said, his voice firm for the first time in years. Margaret blinked. What? I said stop. You pushed her out. You poisoned this marriage. And I let you. Daniel, she couldn't even. She wasn't the problem, he cut in. I was. And you, his voice cracked. You were cruel to someone who never raised her voice. Never once disrespected you. He stared at his mother for a long moment. Then he walked into the bedroom and closed the door. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He sat up and looked through their old photo albums, pictures from the wedding, a road trip through Colorado, the first Christmas tree they decorated together. Elena's eyes always smiled the widest when she wasn't looking at the camera. In one photo, she was seated on the floor, arms around a friend's baby, her smile soft and far away. He stared at that picture for a long time. And finally, he cried. Not out of anger. Not even out of regret. But because he finally realized what he had lost, and that no letter, no apology, and no explanation could ever bring her back. Blue Book Chapter 5, The First Step Toward Healing. Elena sat in the sunlit corner of a small cafe in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, nursing a steaming cup of chamomile tea. The scent of freshly ground coffee beans and warm pastries filled the air, but her mind was elsewhere, distant, drifting through memories and possibilities. She had moved here 3 months ago, escaping the suffocating weight of a life that no longer fit her. New city, new apartment, new job as a substitute teacher, a fresh start. But also a blank slate that made her feel both hopeful and painfully alone. Across the table sat her closest new friend, Claire, a fellow teacher with bright eyes and an infectious laugh. You look lighter, Elena, Claire said. Like the burdens finally lifting. Elena smiled, though the ache beneath her ribs lingered. It's still there, but it doesn't hurt as much. Claire reached out and squeezed her hand. You deserve happiness. Real happiness. Not the kind you had to pretend with. Elena nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Hi, Elena. This is Michael Rivers. I'm a friend of Claire's. She told me about you. Would you like to meet for coffee sometime? She hesitated. For years, she had avoided opening her heart. But something about the message felt safe, gentle, like a door cracked open. Maybe, she replied. A week later, Elena met Michael at a quiet park bench surrounded by blooming magnolia trees. Michael was older by a few years, with kind eyes and a calm presence that instantly put her at ease. They talked about everything and nothing, architecture, favorite books, the strangest meals they'd ever cooked. Slowly, the walls Elena had built began to crumble. Michael shared his own story. A widower with a 6-year-old daughter, he understood loss and the fear of starting over. I don't want to rush anything, he said gently, but I believe we all deserve a second chance. Elena smiled, feeling for the first time in a long time that maybe, just maybe, her heart could heal. Months passed and the seasons changed. Elena's confidence grew as she poured herself into teaching and friendship. One evening, she felt a strange flutter in her chest and later, a faint nausea. A visit to the doctor confirmed what she dared to hope. She was pregnant. The news was a secret she cherished, a small miracle wrapped in years of pain and endurance. That night, Elena sat by her window, tracing gentle circles on her growing belly, whispering a quiet promise. This time, I will fight for us. Blue Book Chapter 6. Whispered Promises. The soft morning light filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow on Elena's face. She lay in bed, fingers gently tracing the curve of her belly, still amazed at the life growing inside her. The past years of silence, sacrifice, and heartbreak seemed like a distant shadow, yet the memories lingered, reminding her how fragile hope could be. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from Michael. Good morning, beautiful. Thinking of you and our little miracle. Elena smiled, heart swelling. She typed back quickly. Can't wait to see you tonight. The world outside their cozy apartment hummed with the promise of new beginnings. Michael was more than a partner, he was a steady hand. A kind voice that reminded her she wasn't alone anymore. But not every moment was filled with light. Sometimes, when the night grew quiet, Elena found herself wrestling with fear. What if this happiness was just a fleeting dream? What if the past came crashing back? One evening, as they sat together assembling a crib, Michael sensed her hesitation. "Elena, what's on your mind?" he asked softly, brushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear. She took a deep breath. "I'm scared. I've waited so long and lost so much. Sometimes I worry that I'm too broken for this to work." Michael smiled, his eyes gentle but unwavering. "You're not broken. You're brave. And whatever happens, we'll face it together." She leaned into him, letting the warmth of his embrace soothe the worries she didn't know how to voice. Meanwhile, miles away in Asheville, Daniel Carter sat alone in his dimly lit living room. The weight of regret pressed down on him like a stone. He often found himself scrolling through Elena's social media, photos of her smiling with Michael, a tiny hand wrapped around her finger. He swallowed hard, pain twisting in his chest. For years, he had listened to his mother's demands, ignored his own heart, and pushed away the woman who loved him most. A letter he had written to Elena lay unfinished on the desk. Words of apology and hope tangled with pride and shame. He sighed, knowing some bridges, once burned, could never be rebuilt. Blue Book Chapter 7. Crossroads. Elena felt the cool morning breeze brush against her face as she stepped out onto the small balcony of her apartment. The city was waking up, birds chirping, distant chatter from neighbors, the faint hum of traffic. The peace was almost surreal compared to the chaos she'd left behind. Michael joined her moments later, handing her a cup of coffee. He wrapped an arm around her waist and pulled her close. "I have a surprise for you," he said softly. Elena raised an eyebrow, curious. "Oh!" Michael smiled, reaching into his jacket pocket and pulling out an envelope. "It's an invitation. From my firm. They want me to lead a new project in Seattle." Elena's heart skipped. "Seattle?" That was across the country. Michael continued, "I didn't want to make any decisions without you. But it's a big opportunity, and I want us to build a future together, wherever that may be." Elena looked down at her growing belly, then back at Michael's hopeful face. The past years had taught her to be cautious, but this was a moment she couldn't ignore. "I want to go with you," she said finally. "But it's scary." Michael nodded. "I know, but we're stronger than fear." Meanwhile, Daniel sat at his kitchen table staring at a crumpled letter in his hands. He'd spent the past weeks writing and rewriting, trying to find the courage to reach out to Elena one last time. He knew the past couldn't be undone. He knew he had hurt her deeply. But he also knew he needed to say goodbye properly, to close the chapter with honesty and respect. With a deep breath, he folded the letter neatly and slipped it into an envelope. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. Daniel drove to the post office, sending the letter with trembling hands. As he walked back to his car, he whispered, "I hope you find the happiness I couldn't give you." Blue Book Chapter 8. The Letter That Changed Everything. A few days later, Elena was folding laundry when her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a handwritten envelope with familiar handwriting, Daniel's. Her hands trembled as she carefully opened it, unfolding the letter inside. "Dear Elena, I don't expect anything from you. No forgiveness, no answers. Just a chance to tell you how deeply sorry I am for the pain I caused, for the times I failed to stand by you, and for the years I let my pride and my mother's voice come before your heart. You taught me what it means to love and to lose, and I am forever grateful. I wish you a life filled with the joy I was too blind to give. You deserve happiness, real happiness. Take care of yourself and the little one. Daniel." Tears blurred her vision as she read and reread the letter. For years, she had craved an apology, a sign that the love they once shared had not been meaningless. But this letter was more than an apology, it was a release. A gift of closure. Elena folded the letter gently and placed it in her jewelry box. She felt a quiet peace settle in her chest. Later that evening, Michael came home to find Elena sitting on the porch, holding their first ultrasound photo. She smiled at him, eyes shining. "It's happening, Michael. Our family is real." He pulled her close, whispering, "I'm so proud of you." For the first time in years, Elena felt whole. Blue Book Chapter 9, A New Dawn. The sun rose softly over Chapel Hill, casting a golden glow over the quiet streets and blooming dogwoods. Elena sat in the nursery. She had carefully prepared pastel walls, soft blankets, and a small rocking chair by the window. Her hands rested gently on her swollen belly as she whispered lullabies she had learned from her grandmother. The room was filled with a peace she had never known before. Michael entered quietly, carrying 2 mugs of tea. He smiled warmly, setting one down beside her. "How are you feeling today?" Elena smiled, eyes sparkling. "Stronger. Like I'm finally breathing after holding my breath for so long." They sat together, sipping tea in comfortable silence. The past, the pain, the betrayal, the loneliness felt like distant storms now calmed by the shelter of love. Outside, birds sang their morning songs, promising new beginnings. Elena closed her eyes and made a silent vow to cherish this life, this love, and the family they were about to welcome. Because sometimes healing isn't just about forgiving the past, it's about embracing the future. Blue Book Chapter 10. Closing the door. The crisp autumn air carried the scent of falling leaves as Elena walked through the park with Michael by her side. The baby's first kicks had become a daily reminder of the life blossoming within her, and with every step, hope grew stronger. Their hands intertwined, they shared stories about the future, names, birthdays, first words, painting a picture of a family filled with laughter and love. Elena's phone vibrated, and she hesitated before looking at the screen. A message from Daniel appeared. "Wishing you peace and happiness. Take care." She smiled softly and deleted the message without a reply. It was the closure she needed, the final thread severed so she could move forward unburdened. Michael squeezed her hand gently. "Ready to go home?" Elena nodded. "Home. That's exactly what this feels like now." As they walked away from the fading leaves and into the golden glow of the setting sun, Elena felt a quiet strength settle in her heart. The past was behind her. The future, bright, uncertain, and beautiful, awaited. Chapter 11, A New Beginning in Chapel Hill. Elena sat quietly in the cramped apartment she had just rented in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. The walls were bare, the rooms echoing with emptiness that both comforted and unsettled her. For the first time in years, she was truly alone, free from the suffocating weight of her past marriage, the relentless judgment of her mother-in-law, and the unbearable silence that had settled between her and Daniel. She traced her fingers along the faded hardwood floor, feeling the coolness seep into her skin, grounding her. This city was unfamiliar, yet somehow promising. The university town buzzed with youthful energy and possibility, a stark contrast to the stifling small town she had left behind. For days after moving, Elena kept to herself. She carried out her daily routines with robotic precision, grocery shopping, unpacking boxes, and applying for substitute teaching positions. She wanted to rebuild her life slowly, piece by piece, without the pressure of anyone's expectations. One chilly autumn afternoon, Elena wandered into a nearby park. The fiery reds and golds of maple leaves framed the walking paths, and the crisp air was invigorating. She found a bench overlooking a small pond and sat down, breathing deeply as she watched a family of ducks glide effortlessly across the water. A soft voice interrupted her thoughts. "Mind if I sit here?" She looked up to see a woman about her age, with warm brown eyes and a friendly smile. "I'm Claire," the woman said, extending her hand. "I teach at the elementary school nearby. You look new to town." Elena hesitated for a moment, then shook her hand. Elena. Yeah, I just moved here. Claire sat beside her, her tone easy and open. Moving is hard, especially when you're starting over. But it's also a chance to rediscover who you are. Elena smiled, feeling an unexpected warmth. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen not as someone defined by pain or failure, but as a person with a story yet to be written. Over the next weeks, Claire became Elena's lifeline. They met regularly for coffee, shared stories about teaching, and supported each other through the challenges of their demanding jobs. Elena found herself laughing again, sometimes forgetting the shadows of her past, if only for a moment. One evening, after a particularly long day at school, Claire invited Elena to a small gathering of friends at a local art gallery. "There'll be people you'd like to meet," Claire promised with a mischievous grin. "And maybe someone who's looking for a friend like you." Elena was hesitant, but agreed. The gallery was a cozy space filled with vibrant paintings and soft jazz music. Among the guests, a tall man with thoughtful eyes approached her. "Hi, I'm Michael Rivers," he said, offering a warm smile. "Claire's told me about you. She thinks we might get along." Elena felt a flutter of nervousness, mixed with curiosity. "Nice to meet you, Michael." Their conversation flowed effortlessly, about architecture, their favorite books, and the quirks of teaching children. Michael's calm presence was soothing, and Elena found herself opening up in ways she hadn't expected. That night, walking home beneath the starlit sky, Elena allowed herself to hope for friendship, hope for healing, and perhaps, one day, hope for love again. For the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel quite so daunting. Blue Book Chapter 12, Unexpected Connections. The days grew shorter, and the crisp air of early winter settled over Chapel Hill as Elena found herself drawn deeper into the rhythms of her new life. The school's hallways buzzed with the laughter of children, their curious eyes full of wonder and innocence, a balm to her weary soul. She reveled in small victories, a child learning to read, a shy student finding their voice, moments that reminded her of the simple joy of teaching. Her friendship with Claire blossomed naturally. They shared coffee breaks filled with candid conversations about their struggles and dreams. Claire's warmth and unwavering support became a steady anchor during moments when Elena's past threatened to resurface. One Saturday afternoon, Claire invited Elena to a community event at a local bookstore, a cozy gathering featuring a book reading and small art exhibits. It was casual, a chance to meet new people, and perhaps most importantly, to step outside the walls of solitude Elena had built around herself. As Elena wandered through the event, admiring the artwork and listening to the soft voice of the author reading passages, she felt a familiar presence. Turning, she saw Michael, standing near the entrance, a gentle smile lighting up his face. He approached with an easy confidence that put her at ease. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said softly. Elena smiled, the warmth in her chest spreading. "Claire convinced me. Said I should get out more." They talked for hours, sharing stories about their lives, their losses, and their hopes. Michael revealed he was a widower with a 6-year-old daughter, Lily, whose laughter often filled his home with light despite the shadows of grief that lingered. Elena listened, moved by his honesty and the tenderness with which he spoke of his daughter. In turn, she shared fragments of her own story, careful, measured, but truthful. As the evening wore on, Michael took Elena's hand gently. "I know we're both carrying scars," he said, "but maybe together we can find a way to heal." Elena looked into his eyes and felt something fragile yet profound, the stirrings of trust, the possibility of a new chapter. Walking home beneath the starry sky, Elena allowed herself a small, tentative hope. The past, with its pain and loss, was still there. But so was the promise of something beautiful waiting to unfold. Blue Book Chapter 13. Healing Together. The weeks that followed marked the beginning of something Elena hadn't dared to imagine, a genuine connection filled with warmth, understanding, and hope. Her relationship with Michael unfolded gently, like the first rays of spring sun melting away winter's chill. Michael invited Elena to his home one evening. A cozy cottage nestled among oak trees with soft lights glowing through the windows. She was nervous but hopeful as she crossed the threshold, greeted by the sound of laughter and tiny footsteps. Lily, Michael's daughter, shyly peeked around the corner, her wide eyes curious but cautious. Elena smiled softly and knelt to her level. "Hi, Lily. I'm Elena." Lily's face broke into a hesitant grin. "Hi." Over dinner, Elena observed the tender bond between father and daughter, the way Michael's eyes lit up when Lily told stories, the gentle way he reassured her when she grew quiet. That night, after Lily's bedtime, Michael and Elena sat by the fireplace, sharing memories of loss and love. Michael spoke of his late wife with affection, the ache still present but softened by time and grace. Elena shared her journey, the years of silence, the pain of being blamed, the quiet heartbreak of losing Daniel not just as a husband, but as a partner who never truly fought for her. Michael reached out, taking her hand in his. "You're incredibly strong, Elena. It's okay to let yourself be vulnerable." She nodded, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that healing was possible, not alone, but together. As the days turned into months, their lives intertwined. Elena found joy in watching Lily grow, in the simple routines of family life, in the shared dreams of a future rebuilt from shattered pieces. One crisp morning, Elena awoke with a flutter in her stomach and a smile she couldn't suppress. The test was positive. Life had given her a new beginning, a second chance to nurture the family she had always yearned for. With Michael by her side and Lily's laughter filling their home, Elena embraced the journey ahead. Ready to face whatever challenges might come, knowing she was no longer alone. Blue Book Chapter 14. Embracing the unexpected. Elena's days became a tapestry of new experiences, morning stretches to soothe her growing belly, gentle laughter shared with Michael and Lily over breakfast, and quiet moments of reflection as she prepared to become a mother once again. The fear that had once gripped her heart softened, replaced by a resilient hope that grew stronger with each passing day. Michael remained a steady presence, his unwavering support a balm to Elena's soul. He attended every doctor's appointment with her, holding her hand and whispering encouragement. Watching him with Lily, Elena saw the depth of his love and knew that their child would be welcomed into a family built on strength, compassion, and healing. One afternoon, while organizing the nursery, Elena found herself overwhelmed by a surge of emotion. She sank onto the rocking chair, tears spilling freely. The past, the years of pain, the silence, the loneliness, all came rushing back in waves. Michael joined her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "It's okay to feel all of this," he said softly. "You don't have to carry it alone anymore." Elena nodded, grateful for the safe space he offered. Together, they talked late into the night, sharing fears, dreams, and promises. As winter melted into spring, Elena felt a quiet strength blooming within her. She was no longer defined by what she had lost, but by the love she was building. And when the day finally came, the day she held her newborn son in her arms, skin soft and warm against hers, Elena knew she had found her true beginning. A family not born from expectation or duty, but from courage, forgiveness, and the choice to embrace life's unexpected gifts. Blue Book Chapter 15. The Miracle of Tomorrow. The hospital room was bathed in the soft glow of morning light as Elena cradled her newborn son, his tiny fingers curling gently around hers. The rhythmic rise and fall of his chest filled the quiet space with a peaceful promise, a new chapter, untainted by the shadows of the past. Michael sat beside her, eyes shining with awe and love. Lily peered through the doorframe, clutching a small teddy bear, her face alight with wonder at the newest member of their family. Elena's heart overflowed. Years of pain, of sacrifice and silence, had led to this, to a moment of pure, unfiltered joy. Later that day, as visitors came and went, Elena received a text message that made her pause. It was from Daniel. "Congratulations, Elena. I'm sorry for everything. I hope you find the happiness you deserve." She read the words slowly, feeling the weight of a journey that had finally come to rest. Forgiveness, she realized, was not about forgetting but about freeing herself to live fully. With Michael and Lily by her side, Elena knew the future held its challenges, but also its miracles. She smiled, looking down at her son's peaceful face. Together, they would write a story not of pain, but of hope, a story where love healed and life blossomed anew. Chapter 16. Return and New Beginnings. The plane touched down at Charlotte Douglas International Airport on a crisp autumn afternoon. Daniel Carter sat by the window, watching the patchwork of forests and rivers blur beneath the clouds. It had been nearly a year since he last saw Elena, since the day she left him with nothing but a letter and a silence heavier than any word. His heart was a turbulent sea of regret and hope. The past had taught him painful lessons. Pride could be a prison, silence a weapon, and love, if neglected, a fragile flame easily extinguished. As the wheels kissed the runway, Daniel felt a flicker of resolve. This trip was not about reclaiming what was lost, but about facing the truth and seeking a path forward, whatever shape that might take. The streets of Chapel Hill were vibrant with the colors of fall. Orange and crimson leaves danced in the breeze, carpeting the sidewalks where students hurried between classes. Daniel wandered through the town square, a place so different from the quiet life he had left behind in Asheville. He found a small cafe, the kind where the baristas remembered your name and poured each cup with care. As he ordered a coffee, his phone buzzed with a message. It was from Claire. "I hear you're back in town. Elena's been doing well. If you want to talk, let me know." Daniel stared at the message, fingers trembling. He typed a hesitant reply, "Yes, please." Days later, Daniel met Claire at a sunlit cafe near the university. Her warm smile was a balm to his nervous heart. "She's healing," Claire said gently. "Stronger than you might think." They talked about Elena, her resilience, her quiet courage, the new life she was building. Claire spoke of the family Elena had found with Michael and Lily, of the peace she seemed to have embraced. Daniel listened, the weight of his mistakes settling deep within him. "I don't expect forgiveness," he admitted, "but I want to make amends. To be better." Claire nodded. "That's a good place to start." That evening, Daniel stood before the door of the small house Elena now called home. His hand hovered over the doorbell before he finally pressed it. Heart pounding. The door opened, and there she was, Elena. The woman he once knew, and yet not the same. Stronger, braver, wiser. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. The silence filled with years of pain, love, and unspoken words. Finally, Elena spoke. "Daniel." He swallowed, voice steady. "Elena, I'm here because I want to say I'm sorry. For everything." Tears shimmered in her eyes, but her expression was calm. "Thank you," she whispered. And in that moment, a fragile bridge was built not to reclaim the past, but to honor the journey that had led them here. Blue Book Chapter 17, Caring for the Past. The cold November wind cut through the streets of Asheville as Daniel drove slowly toward his mother's house. The news had come abruptly. Margaret Carter had suffered a stroke. Though their relationship had been fraught with tension and unresolved bitterness, Daniel knew that some things blood ties. Duty remained. Arriving at the familiar brick house, Daniel hesitated for a moment before stepping inside. The sterile smell of hospital equipment filled the air, and the soft beep of monitors echoed through the quiet rooms. Margaret lay in a hospital bed, pale and fragile, her eyes fluttering open briefly before closing again. Daniel sat beside her, taking her frail hand in his. The years of anger and resentment threatened to rise, but they were tempered by a deeper understanding now of imperfection, of pain, and of the fleeting nature of life. Over the next weeks, Daniel became a constant presence. He coordinated care, communicated with doctors, and stayed by his mother's side through moments of consciousness and confusion. It was humbling work, and it forced him to confront not only his mother's failings, but also his own. One afternoon, as Margaret's eyes slowly opened, Daniel leaned closer. "Mom, I'm here." She struggled to speak, but a faint whisper emerged. "I'm sorry." The words hung in the air, fragile and tentative. Daniel nodded, a mixture of sorrow and relief washing over him. "I forgive you," he said softly. "We both have scars." In caring for his mother, Daniel found a path toward healing within himself. It was not an erasure of the past, but a step toward peace, a recognition that love could be complicated, but also redemptive. Blue Book Chapter 18. A Letter of Redemption. Daniel sat at the worn wooden desk in his small study, the soft glow of a desk lamp illuminating a blank sheet of paper before him. For days, he had wrestled with how to find the right words that could bridge the chasm of years, regret, and silence between him and Elena. His fingers hovered above the keyboard, then finally began to type. "Dear Elena, I don't expect this letter to erase the past or heal the wounds I caused, but I need you to know how truly sorry I am for the pain, the silence, and for not standing by you when you needed me most. I was blinded by pride and fear, and I let my mother's voice drown out my own heart. That was my failure, not yours. I have spent these months caring for her, confronting the mistakes I made, and realizing the depth of what I lost. I hope you have found the happiness and peace that I couldn't give you. Thank you for the years we shared, and for the strength you showed in walking away. If there is ever a moment you wish to speak, I will be here not to ask for anything, but simply to listen. With respect and hope." Daniel. He read the letter over and over, his heart pounding with vulnerability. With a deep breath, he printed it, folded it carefully, and sealed it in an envelope. That afternoon, he entrusted the letter to Claire, asking her to deliver it personally if the moment was right. Days passed with no word. Daniel's anxiety ebbed and flowed like tides, but he found solace in the small steps he was taking toward atonement. Blue Book Chapter 19. The Power of Forgiveness. Several days after Claire delivered Daniel's letter, Elena sat alone in her living room, the late afternoon sun casting warm patterns through the window blinds. Her mind lingered on the envelope she had hesitated to open for days, torn between curiosity and caution. Finally, with trembling hands, she unfolded the letter. As her eyes scanned the carefully chosen words, a complex wave of emotions washed over her: pain, sorrow, relief, and something she hadn't felt in a long time: understanding. Daniel's apology was sincere, heartfelt, and free of expectation. It was a gift, a bridge extended without demanding anything in return. Tears streamed down Elena's cheeks as she set the letter aside. Forgiveness wasn't about erasing the past. It was about releasing herself from the weight of bitterness and allowing space for healing. That evening, when Michael returned home, Elena shared her feelings quietly. "I read Daniel's letter," she said softly, "and I forgive him." Michael took her hands in his eyes shining. "That's incredibly brave, Elena." She smiled, feeling lighter than she had in years. Forgiveness was not forgetting, but freeing, and with that freedom, she was ready to embrace the future fully. Blue Book Chapter 20. A Family Reborn. The soft morning light filtered through the curtains as Elena cradled her sleeping son in her arms. His delicate breaths were steady and calm, a testament to the miracle of life and love that had blossomed against all odds. Michael sat beside her, watching with quiet admiration. Lily lay curled up on the couch, her favorite stuffed animal clutched tightly as she dreamed peacefully. The house, once filled with silence and uncertainty, now resonated with laughter, love, and the promise of new beginnings. Elena thought back on her journey, the pain of a marriage unraveling, the loneliness of unspoken truths, and the strength it took to walk away. But more than that, she reflected on the healing power of love, forgiveness, and courage. She looked up at Michael, their eyes meeting with unspoken gratitude. Together, they had built not just a family, but a home, a sanctuary where past wounds could mend and futures could flourish. As the sun rose higher, casting golden light across their lives, Elena whispered a silent vow to nurture this family with all the love and hope in her heart, cherishing every moment of this new, beautiful chapter.